$3.6 billion. That's how much Sony paid for Bungie. Not for nostalgia, not because of Halo, but because Bungie was supposed to be Sony's blueprint for live service gaming. The studio that knew how to build games that keep players spending and coming back for years. This week, Bungie launched Marathon, their big AAA live service extraction shooter. Years in the making, hundreds of millions spent, over 800 developers, marketing everywhere you look. This was the game that was meant to justify all of that, Bungie's return to form. But on that very same day, a tiny 10-person indie studio launched their game into early access. Same day, 3 times the players, for a roguelike deck builder in early access. Slay the Spire 2 launched to a record-breaking 282,000 concurrent players on Steam, the highest ever for any roguelike game. Marathon managed to scrape together just 88,000. This is the studio that made Halo and Destiny, and they just got lapped 3 times over by an early access game from 10 developers working mostly from home. Madness. And look, this isn't new. This has been happening for years. Indie games are redefining how we think about games, the studios we choose to trust, the games we spend our money on. AAA is still addicted to launching live service games with promises of seasons, roadmaps, and evolving worlds. Players show up on day one, look around, and leave. Every time, same story, same result. And Marathon looks to be following the same exact path as every other live service game that's come and gone in the last 10 years. So why does this keep happening? Why do indie games quietly launch with no marketing, no sponsored streamers, and still utterly destroy everything in their path? Because the answer is actually pretty obvious. We've been telling the big studios for years, and somehow AAA still refuses to see it. The player numbers are just the proof. Let me explain what's actually going on here. So to understand why this matters, you need to understand what Sony were actually trying to build. When Sony acquired Bungie in 2022, they weren't just buying a game studio, they were buying a blueprint. Bungie were going to be Sony's live service center of excellence. Yes, that is literally what they called it. The team that would teach PlayStation how to build games that print money indefinitely. They had big plans, a whole slate of live service titles, 12 of them planned, a complete shift in how PlayStation made their games, the future of the business basically. But then Concord happened, Sony's own live service shooter, pulled offline within 2 weeks, studio closed shortly after. Sony's response was they admitted publicly that their live service transformation wasn't going entirely smoothly. And yeah, that was one way to put it. So Marathon wasn't just Bungie's next game, it was the whole live service strategy's last real chance of credibility. And Bungie asked us to pay $40 upfront for a live service extraction shooter, which of course isn't unheard of. Arc Raiders launched the same way and did massively well, but when you're asking players to pay upfront and commit to seasons, mandatory wipes and roadmaps in a market that's already been burned repeatedly and already has multiple hugely successful extraction shooters, that's a very big ask. But here's the thing, the player numbers shouldn't be a surprise, because while Marathon was being built, Bungie were having a very public nightmare. Layoffs in 2023, another 200 jobs cut in 2024, internal projects cancelled, staff shuffled onto Marathon, Bungie got caught using stolen artwork in the game itself and blamed a former employee. The original game director was quietly fired after misconduct allegations, and employees described the morale inside the studio as being in freefall. All of this very public. None of those things make a bad game, but it absolutely destroys any trust we once had in the studio. Now to be fair, 88,000 players on Steam isn't a total disaster, and Marathon Steam reviews are sitting at 90% positive, so people who played it clearly liked it. This isn't a broken, unfinished mess, it's just an average performer in a sea of average performing games, and for a studio like Bungie, that's nowhere near good enough. Especially not when Arc Raiders is still pulling in nearly 200,000 players a day, with a peak of almost 500,000, with the same genre of game, the same model. And certainly not when it's getting absolutely destroyed by a 10-person indie studio card game in early access on its launch day. But here's what's really important, Bungie used to get the benefit of the doubt. When Destiny launched half finished in 2014, people stayed because it was Bungie. When Destiny 2 stumbled, people came back because it was Bungie. That name meant something. That trust was real. But years of aggressive live service decisions slowly spent every last bit of that trust. So when Marathon arrived, something had fundamentally changed. We weren't looking at a new Bungie game with rose-tinted glasses, we were looking at a live service game that Bungie Bungie happened to be making. And that's a completely different thing, because we've seen this exact game before. Different name, same systems, seasonal battle passes, cosmetic shops, roadmaps, currencies, different games, same template. And we're done with it. That proof is undeniable. Every time a new indie launches and quietly outperforms everything around it with zero marketing, that's not luck. That's us voting with our wallets, saying the same thing we've been saying for years. We just want a good game, one that isn't after every penny in our wallets, to play something that's actually fun. So while AAA keep recycling the same template, indie studios have figured out exactly what players actually want, and Mega Crit are the perfect example of that. They've been building Slay the Spire since 2017, started as 2 people, built one of the most beloved games in indie history, and when it came to making a sequel, they did something remarkable. They explained why they were making it. Not a hype trailer, not a roadmap reveal. They told their community about the tech debt, the engine limitations, the fact that the team was burning out trying to keep up. They wanted to do it properly, so they spent 5 years slowly building the sequel from the ground up with just 10 developers. And what did they launch with? More content than the original had, no battle pass, no seasons, no microtransactions, just a game designed to be fun from the moment you press play. And the result, 282,000 concurrent players on Steam, 3 times more than Marathon on the same day, the highest peak ever recorded for a roguelike, 97% overwhelmingly positive reviews on Steam, not because people just like the game, but because a community that's been respected for years showed up to say thank you. They didn't chase the next big thing, they didn't pivot to a new genre, they didn't bolt on a battle pass and 15 skins and call it innovation, they just made more of what people already loved, but made it better, improved upon the idea, and it turns out that's more than enough. On launch day, while Marathon were posting their corporate announcements, Mega Crit took to Twitter to congratulate the Marathon team on their launch, telling their audience not to let small indie passion projects like this pass you by. They called Marathon the small indie passion project. That's a 10-person studio gently, politely, absolutely destroying a $3.6 billion studio with a heart emoji. Love it. But that's exactly the difference. One studio communicates like a corporation executing a product launch. The other communicates like humans, people who actually love making games. And that's the point. I'm sure Marathon will find its audience. There's a decent enough game there and 90% reviews don't lie. But in a market this crowded, decent isn't enough anymore. Because what Slay the Spire 2 proved on launch day isn't that AAA games are bad, it's that we've developed a radar for studios that actually respect us. Studios that believe in what they're making, that build games for the people playing them, not for the shareholders expecting a return. Studios that don't treat their community like a revenue stream to be optimized. And that's what Mega Crit have. That's what Bungie lost somewhere between Destiny's 4th expansion and their 3rd round of layoffs. And that's what no amount of marketing budget and sponsored streamers can manufacture. Trust isn't a feature you can add in a Season 2 update. You can't roadmap your way to it. You either have it or you don't. Sony spent $3.6 billion on Bungie, but no amount of money in the world can buy trust. As always, thanks so much for watching. Appreciate you. If you enjoyed the video, drop a like, a comment, and subscribe to the channel for more. Thanks again. I'll see you in the next one.